A man wanted to climb a tall mountain, so he began his journey. But as he was not a skilled climber, he fell many times. Each time he fell, he would get up, brush himself off, and try again. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't reach the top. One day, while he was taking a break, he noticed some small cracks in the rock. He looked up and saw that the cracks were actually steps cut into the rock by a strong wind over many years. Taking a closer look, he saw that each step was very small, barely big enough for him to place his foot on. But if he could reach those steps, they would take him all the way to the top. So he started climbing again, this time placing his foot on the small steps cut out in the rock. And after a while, he reached the top of the mountain. He was so happy that he had finally succeeded. But then he saw something that made him sad. At the bottom of the mountain, there was a huge crowd of people, all trying to climb to the top. But just like him, they were all struggling, and none of them had yet reached the top. But there was one thing that made him really sad. As he looked down at the people below, he saw that they were all looking up at the mountain, admiring its beauty from afar. They were too afraid to take the first step and begin the climb. And even those who had begun the climb were too afraid to look for small opportunities to help them reach the top. They were just looking at the mountain from a distance and giving up. The man stayed at the top for a few days, watching the people below. Every day, thousands of people would come to the mountain, but none of them ever reached the top. And he realized that the reason for this was not because they were afraid or because the mountain was too hard to climb. The real reason was that they were all looking at the mountain the wrong way. They were admiring its beauty from a distance and never realizing that the mountain was full of small opportunities that could take them to the top. If they had just paid attention to the small things, like the small steps cut out in the rock, they could have climbed to the top just like him. But they were too busy admiring the view to notice these small opportunities. The man stayed at the top of the mountain for a few more days, but soon he had to leave. As he began his descent, he looked back one last time at the people below. He saw that some of them had finally begun to climb, but most of them were still just admiring the mountain from a distance. And that's when he realized that success is not always found in big opportunities. Sometimes it's found in the small things that others ignore.